Oh, okay. Well,
So that's why, yeah.
That's why
There will be more people virtually in attendance.
Okay. Okay.
And then we'll share it with
good?
People within the College of Education through our newsletter. So
Yeah.
That would be good.
So it'll be, all right, well, we'll go ahead and get started then. Thank you guys for coming out, and it's a couple minutes after 5:30, but feel free to, pop on, pop off for the web audience. Welcome, thank you for joining us. I'm John Giger. I'm the director of the Center for Educational Technology here, and I guess we're kicking off our winter speaker panel series with conversation on AI and special education tonight. So I will throw it over to our GA and we will get going here. So if you want to introduce yourself and everybody else.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
My name is James Ballas. I'm a computer science graduate student here at DePaul University and also the graduate assistant for the CET. And the Center for Educational Technology at DePaul University College of Education welcomes everyone to this 1-hour panel discussion, AI and Tech Reshaping Special Education. It's happening inside the CET lab right now, and it's also being streamed online for those of you watching online. And we've invited 3 guests here tonight to talk about the advancement of technology, specifically AI and assistive technology, and the role it plays inside the special education classroom. And this is such a huge topic, obviously, so I mean, an hour wouldn't do it justice, but we're going to try to tackle it here tonight, just a little, at least scratch the surface. What we really want this to be is an informal discussion where those of you here and online can jump in, ask questions, feel free to get into the discussion. And some of the areas we'll explore tonight will include individualized education programs, assistive technologies, early disability screening. We'll talk about some of the hottest ed tech trends out there and discuss where all of this is headed in the future. And we'll also even tackle the big question, could these new technologies ever replace the teacher? And I think that's a big question out there when it comes to AI. And our goal is to leave everybody with a better understanding of the tools out there to assist students with special needs and the role we play now and how we can prepare ourselves for what is to come in the future. So without further ado, let me introduce and thank all of our panelists for joining us here tonight. We have Dr. Brian Friedlander. He's actually joining us via Zoom. He's an author, associate professor of education at the College of St. Elizabeth in Morristown, expert in the area of assistive technology and mind mapping. Welcome, Dr. Friedlander. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here. We also have Ralph Samek. He's the owner of Woodlake Technologies, a leading distributor of assistive technology throughout the Midwest. A Chicago-based company helping individuals meet their vocational, educational, and personal goals. Welcome. Thank you for joining us as well. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. And we have Dr. Gregory Moorhead. He is the director of the Center for Students with Disabilities here at DePaul University. And thank you so much for joining us as well. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Let's go ahead and get this started. And first question is basically, start with a question for all of you. If you could tell us what made you get into this field of special education or tech. And why don't we go ahead and start with Dr. Moorhead.
And you would start with me. To be very honest with you, I actually got to be very candid. I want to tell you, I actually kind of fell into this position. Not the one here at DePaul, but I started working in disability services in 2004 at Rutgers University. And at the time, I was working with the TRIO programs. And they had an opening in disability services, and they needed someone who had some experience with disability services, and they still chose me. I didn't have any experience working in disability services, and I always joke later on, had I known what I was getting into, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But I love the work that we do in disability services, and it's been really gratifying, doing this. It's the kind of field that when I got into it at the time, about 15 years ago, there weren't a whole lot of college programs that actually prepared you for going into this field. So it's really great now that there are more college programs across the country that prepare people for doing this kind of work. My degree is in educational leadership. That's where I got my EDD. And so I've learned along the way. I've had great mentors at Rutgers University, and then later working at the University of Chicago in disability services, and then finally working here at DePaul University. So I'm here because I really am committed to social justice. And all the work that I did before working in higher education was working with underrepresented populations. So this work really fits into that vein, and it's very important to me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. Let's head on out to Dr. Friedlander. You're in Morristown. What state is that in?
New Jersey.
Okay, wow. Okay, from Chicago to New Jersey here tonight. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you involved in tech and teaching?
Yeah, actually my career path is not a straight line. I actually have my PhD and was a school psychologist for many years. And early in my career, working with students with special needs, my director sent me out for a full-day workshop on special ed and technology, and I met Bud and Dolores Hagan, who started the conference Closing the Gap, and they had, at that point, they had a newsletter, and I was just, it was one of those moments where I was just like in awe of the potential for what technology, you know, could do for students with special needs. And back, I've been in the field for probably over 30 years now, and back in the day, there was really no training. It was basically just a small network of professionals that would somehow meet up at conferences along the way. And so about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I left the public schools as a school psychologist, and started teaching at the college level. I teach courses in special ed and assistive technology, and also I do a fair amount of consulting to schools. But I love the work, I love the technology, and I just, you know, love working with kids to show them their potential, and also working with teachers to show them what the possibilities are with these various technologies. And it just keeps getting better and better.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. And we have Mr. Samek here, CEO of Woodlake Technologies, leading distributor of assistive technology. That's pretty big.
You know, not only that, I have a degree from DePaul University.
Oh, you're an alum. There you go.
So, you know, I was a consultant to the major corporations in Chicago, providing at that time network connectivity solutions for IBM mainframes and minis. And I was approached by somebody who had some technology. He was a professor at U of I who was blind, and they had this technology that basically would take printed material that otherwise would be inaccessible to him because he was blind, and it would read out loud to him. And I thought, this is really interesting, and that became my career choice after having experience. And I thought, really, I could get paid for doing this stuff and satisfy that need to do good and to earn a living at the same time. So that's how I got involved.
Wow. All right. So thank you guys again so much for joining us. Now, what is assistive technology and what needs can it solve? The U.S. Department of Education defines assistive technology as any item, piece of equipment, or product system used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. And in fact, in a study from Research and Markets from August of 2018, 13% of all public school students, 13% ages 3 to 21 receive special education services. That's a pretty big number there. 34% had specific learning disabilities. I guess the first question is, how can we identify students with special needs and determine the tools or devices that will work for them? And why don't we go ahead and start with Dr. Friedlander.
Well, I mean, most of my referrals come, you know, from the classroom, you know, teachers or their parents. Generally, I could say in New Jersey, since there's 600 independent school systems, every school does it a little differently, but pretty much students generally get identified for assistive technology through the child study team, through the learning consultant, school psychologist, or the social worker. And then typically, for the most part, a lot of the schools still use that old, you know, model of, you know, having an expert come in and do an assessment to determine what is, you know, what is needed. But, you know, hopefully things are changing as, you know, some of the tools are being built into the operating systems and the application. So, you know, sometimes even I feel, even though I do this work, is that there's certainly enough hooks and enough software that, you know, teachers could be trying these things on their own, such as, you know, text-to-speech and word prediction and things of that sort. But typically in New Jersey, it's still pretty much a medical model where there's a referral and then there's kind of a formal evaluation, especially when students are moving up the grades and they need, kids, especially kids with learning disabilities, need to access the curriculum and textbooks and novels, and that's where it comes in. So I tend to get referrals for those kids that are very dysgraphic, have trouble with writing and penmanship, and also students who have difficulty with decoding and have a diagnosis of dyslexia.
What about early disabilities screening, Dr. Friedlander? What's out there right now to catch it early?
I know some of the schools will do some, like Ames Web testing, especially for, kind of catching some of those kids that, have the potential of developing, decoding, challenges. So a lot of it is, both, formative assessments, and school districts have their own, assessment tools for screening, especially of kindergarten age students.
And you guys do evaluation at Woodlake Technologies, some type of assessment there too?
In the past we had, but it seems that in Illinois, the model is that there are agencies that are set up, like early intervention, which do early assessment and evaluation of preschool children. And then once in the school district, once they've entered, there's usually some type of an assessment that basically results in an IEP from the in-house assistive technology.
And that's an individualized education plan?
Correct.
Okay. And what about at DePaul? I know we have a ton of clinicians here.
Yeah, but by the time the students come here to DePaul, typically students already are coming with an evaluation. So we're not so much concentrating on the IEP, the higher education level. We're usually looking at more of a psychoeducational neuropsych evaluation report, because the IEPs, what they do is they give us a lot of good information about the kinds of accommodations that students have had in the K through 12 system. Sometimes it really may not go into great detail about the functional limitations in the classroom, and so that's why we rely a little bit more on the psychoeducational reports to show us a little bit more about what those accommodations may look like. Now, there are some students though who come to us and they don't have a diagnosis and they haven't been evaluated before, and so our job at that juncture is to try to connect those students with the resources in the community where they can have an appropriate evaluation.
Excellent. And your experience, assistive technology is very powerful. It's giving really students the chance to be independent and to excel, in academics and sports. How is it doing that, Dr. Friedlander, in your experience? How is it giving these students the chance to excel?
It's kind of interesting because as a background as a psychologist, one of the probably leading referral issues is around the area of writing and written expression. And it's incredible just how many of the students not only have difficulties with written expression, but they also have behavioral difficulties. And these are kids who tend to get really frustrated. They may have poor handwriting or have difficulty getting their ideas down from their head to paper. And when I come in and I can bring in tools that can scan worksheets that students can type, or they can use speech recognition or word prediction, it just reduces the frustration. But more importantly, a lot of these tools give the students the independence to do things on their own when they were dependent maybe on the teacher or a scribe to do the work. So it's really pretty incredible when you see the reduction in frustration, and it just it opens the student to learning and to show what they're capable of doing. So it kind of can change the whole perspective on the learning experience, from the standpoint of the student, but also from the standpoint the teacher gets to see true productivity and what the student's capable of doing. So it's pretty powerful when you match the right software and the right tools with the student, what can happen. And especially in the area of reading technologies give students access to the materials. It allows them to participate in discussions. And for a lot of students with dyslexia, the real issue is the coding. But once they're kind of reading with their ears, they're able to understand and comprehend the material, and this allows them to advance in their studies. Where in years past, They might have been put in a resource room or pulled out for some of the core content areas. So it makes a big difference.
And Mr. Samek, you had showed a piece of assistive technology earlier. You even mentioned that what made you get involved in all this was, you know, the person who couldn't see.
You know, I think when I first became involved, the notion was that you wanted to create a level playing field for everyone. And I think it emanated out of the Section 508 of the Federal Code, which basically created a least restrictive environment, the educational environment. And but I think it's no longer that. I think it's become a more an empowerment of what a person is able to do, and yet maintaining their individual dignity without advertising that they have a special need. And you know, you can see that how technology has moved from dedicated systems that a person would have to be pulled out and to be able to go to a different room to be able to use, to now where they can just use their phone or a small wearable device. So it's interesting how the technology has changed, and acknowledgement of, you know, the humanity of the person.
So for the teachers or student teachers that are watching this video out there, why should they care about this type of technology?
Well, yeah, I think it enhances the learning experience, but also at the same time, I think what we're trying to do is create a situation where students have more autonomy. Like Ralph pointed out, in years past, what would happen is students would have to go to a special room, or they would have to rely on someone at the university with certain kinds of expertise to provide them access. So for now, for instance, in our department, we start using what's called smart pens. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the concept of smart pens. In years past, when students would come to us and they would need note takers, what we would do is we would try to recruit a peer note taker from the class. And that has its limitations. It's great because you've got a student who's already enrolled in the class, so they're committed to the content of the class, so they're paying good attention, but at the same time, they may not necessarily catch all the things that are important for the student to obtain and to hear, to process. So it's very subjective. So we start issuing smart pens and we give them to students who don't have any limitations in terms of grapho-motor skills, and they're able to use a smart pen in a way that allows them to access the lecture. They can go home, they can look at their notes on the pad, and if they look at a particular juncture of their notes and they read it and they say, oh gosh, I don't really remember what the professor was saying at this particular juncture of the notes, they can put the smart pen down on that tablet and it will read back aloud what the professor was saying.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Friedlander, why should teachers care?
Well, they should care because they want all their students to be successful, and that's the important part. And they also, using assistive technology, as I said before, it promotes, you know, independence, and also builds, you know, the student's self-confidence that they can learn, as opposed to students that are frustrated, become behavioral problems, and don't have access to the curriculum. And so it's really important. And I think, you know, as was mentioned, you know, there's a lot of hooks, you know, into the software today that where you don't need a specialized device to, you know, accomplish some of the things that need to be accomplished. I mean, if you look at, you know, what Microsoft is doing in Office 365 with their immersive reader, students can be accessing text-to-speech right within, you know, Word 365 or even Word Online, or even using the Microsoft Edge browser. Text-to-speech is built in, no plugins. So there's lots of tools that if teachers knew were available, they could be using them. And you know, it's not like you know, IT needs to turn them on or install anything. It's just built in either into the operating system or the applications themselves. And it gives students, you know, the self-confidence and the independence to do the learning that needs to be done. And it was mentioned before, you know, it's not, you know, intrusive. Everyone else is using Microsoft Word, so is the student, but they're using, you know, different aspect of it. So it's pretty exciting to see how these different companies are building these tools into the applications or the operating system that can take advantage of text-to-speech and speech recognition, you know, as well as word prediction.
So we had talked about the Individualized Education Program, the IEP. For those of you not familiar, it's a written education plan designed to meet a child's learning needs. And artificial intelligence is helping educators identify learning disabilities and offering individualized learning. The systems respond to the needs of the student, putting greater emphasis on certain topics, repeating things that students haven't mastered, and generally helping students to work at their own pace. Is there such a thing as assistive technology, dependency, being too dependent on these types of technologies out there? Your thoughts?
Our approach is to basically give the skill sets to make that student a successful student and to be independent as much as possible. And what we try to avoid is creating an artificial situation where when they leave the university or the high school, they know they are faced with the reality of the real world, and those resources that once were provided in the academic environment aren't there anymore. Then that leaves a student hanging high and dry. So we hope that our approach is the technology that we provide can go with the student and creates a location independent situation where they can function to their highest potential without relying on somebody else. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's our approach.
Dr. Freelander, what can be done to make sure a student doesn't become too dependent on assistive technologies?
I honestly, I wouldn't use the word dependent. I think, all of us, whether we've had IEPs or we've had learning, profiles, we all choose tools to use in our workplace and in our daily life. So I don't really see it as dependent, but I think it's, as one of the other speakers mentioned, we want to, be able to allow students to choose those tools that can continue to make them successful, whether they're, lifelong learners or in the workplace. And so it's really a matter of students, selecting those tools, whether it be a smart pen that can be used in the workplace, or a smartphone with certain apps that help them to read. I think that our goal is to empower and to help students find those strategies and those tools that make them as effective as they can in whatever work they do.
So these systems, these artificial intelligence systems, are creating these IEPs, or it's responding to the needs of the student, I guess, repeating things that the students haven't mastered. Are there concerns with relying on a computer to do all of this work, Dr. Friedlander?
I think there's definitely always concerns in in terms of how much I'll use the word FaceTime we're doing with our devices. I mean, just recently Apple included in the latest iOS, it gives you like a weekly reading of how much screen time you have. And so I think there's always a danger of students spending too much time in front of their tablets and computer, because that means that they're not doing other things. On the same token, if we can apply certain strategies, or we have tools that have algorithms or artificial intelligence that can help students when they're learning, that's fantastic, and that's a different story. But we do have to be careful that the youth of today are not spending 90% of their time in front of a screen, and that they're interacting with other people, they're involved in sports and activities, so that they have a full-rounded experience.
I think we're all guilty of that. All right, let's shift gears here now. Let's talk about some challenges teachers have experienced with assistive technology. Obviously, there are many challenges working with a student who has special needs. What are the challenges that teachers experience in adopting and implementing assistive technologies? Did you want to speak on that, Dr. Moorehead?
Wow, that's a really difficult question for me to answer, because we don't have a whole lot in terms of assistive technologies right now that we're using in the classroom here at DePaul. Like I said, we use a smart pen. Students are using the voice dictation software. Students are using screen readers, but quite frankly, I would like to see more of our students be aware of the assistive technologies that are out there and use them so they can be a little bit more independent. Books in audio format, electronic text, that gets to be really problematic for us. And making sure that students are aware of the kinds of technologies that are already built into their systems, that would really be a boon for us. So we actually need to build into our model here an IT expert in our office who has that bandwidth and who understands how to promote that use amongst our students.
Do you see any challenges, Mr. Samek? I mean, time constraints, technical problems, lack of training, support?
So I just attended a conference where for vision itinerant teachers who basically provide, it was last week, and they basically, not complaint, but what they would wish if they had a wish list that would be fulfilled would be more time to learn the assistive technology, to be able to better help the student. They would love to have the ability to prepare content for the student, specifically designed for the student. So for example, being able to prepare Braille maps in order to teach math, higher math, requires a tremendous amount of effort to produce content that makes sense to a student who has vision challenges. And the technology and the content that is out there that was supposed to be produced by publishers that are to be accessible are not accessible. And so I think that more time to learn the technology, more time to prepare the content, and more time to help instruct the students, I would say.
Dr. Friedlander, what advice do you give teachers out there who are starting to use these types of devices?
I usually say, start small. Prioritize. Change is difficult for anyone. And when teachers have a large number of students they're working with, and maybe one or two students is using the assistive technology, it means sort of a change in their workflow. So I oftentimes try to help them think about how they can alter their workflow to make it easier to provide text in a digital format. As an example, many of them don't realize that many of the copy machines can create PDFs as the first step before doing the OCR. So it's sometimes little things like that can help in a big way. But change is challenging, and I think one of the things, unfortunately, schools have gotten really good as far as the equipment, purchasing the assistive technology, but implementation still lags behind. And oftentimes schools say they don't have the budget to do the implementation correctly. I mean, I've seen when schools have implemented it correctly, and I mean, providing the parents, student, and the teachers training, and then ongoing consultation to problem solve when things, don't work, or just to reinforce when things are going well. I've seen it make a really big difference in terms of the benefits that the student is getting out of the technology. Unfortunately, sometimes I'll come in for one a training session for an hour and a half, and that's the last time I'll be there, and it kind of falls on on its face. So implementation, ongoing training is really support, and supporting the teachers. They do need the support. There's still a lot of teachers that are uncomfortable with technology, and they need that safety net of that consultant or in-house person to pat them on the back and guide them and help them when things don't go according to plan.
Well, that's when you call Woodlake Technologies, right? All right, so you wanted to add something?
No, not. It's a big burden that many of the teachers have on their shoulders, and it used to be a lot different when you had resource rooms. You'd have in the K through 12, you'd have students pulled out, and they wouldn't be part of the regular classroom. And so the cost of that, being able to be a participant in a regular classroom environment, means that to some degree the student gets short-shrifted by the teacher's attention, because there's 30 or 40 students in the class and they're just one, and the teacher's got to see everybody. So I think that's a problem.
If I could just say
Go
too,
ahead.
I think that, that model of teacher support or faculty support is gonna look a lot different in a higher education setting. So, how do we support faculty here at the university level and knowing how to use assistive technologies and provide them with the training and provide them with the support that they need to be able to incorporate into the classroom is gonna look a little bit different, but again, the importance of it is still the same.
Is there a class in assistive technology at DePaul?
I don't
There is.
believe so.
I mean, I'm in computer science, and there's no course.
So you have teachers going out who really aren't going into a school system, and they're not aware of some of the technology nor how the technology works. So that's a problem right there.
That's when they tune into the CET.
Yeah.
We got you covered, folks. All right, let's shift gears here. How is AI reshaping the special education classroom? It's actually reshaping it in many ways. For example, researchers at the Israel Institute of Technology's Laboratory of Clinical Neurophysiology claim to have developed an AI model that can automatically, without human intervention and with state-of-the-art precision, identify dyslexic readers. And early studies have shown humanoid robots are acting as peers to help autistic children develop important social skills. Where do you guys, where's all this headed? I mean, for all the teachers and student teachers watching, what should they be doing now to prepare?
Well, I mean, at a minimum, they should be taking at least, those teachers that are going into special ed, they should be taking a course in, in assistive technology. But it's all about lifelong learning and getting professional development. In a couple of weeks, I'll be running an ed camp on campus for teachers to get professional development, and there we've got individuals that are in the field that will share their knowledge. So it's ongoing. Ongoing learning is really important. But having a strong foundation in assistive technology and even educational technology is really crucial. At this point in time, in the educational field.
Mr. Samek, you're hearing about AI going to take over the world. What should teachers be doing right now, or thinking about?
I'm thinking more about the student in what that potential can unlock for the student, and really the idea would be that perhaps the teacher would be addressing the student just like every other student. The student would be under the radar. Nobody would know that student would be any different. I'm thinking about some of the wearable technology right now that can actually read a textbook, so you don't have to prepare additional content. Some of the AI products that are now coming on board actually can describe a scene. So, for example, a student could open up a book, could read it, and then there might be a picture there, and the camera would identify and describe to the student what's in that scene. And I think that would be just like amazing. And in the case of note taking, or in the case of a student who's hard of hearing, there's such excellent software that will translate in real time a lecture to the student who couldn't hear it, and they could read along in real time, and that's exciting. Or for the student who is not a good note taker, that could be transcribed and saved, and they can review it later on or listen to it later on. So it's technology that hopefully will be focused on the student, and the teacher will just do their job, which is to teach. And hopefully that's what the future will be. The technology will be that good, the teacher won't know that the students has any challenges.
Now you brought a little device in. Where is it?
I'm wearing it around my neck.
Do you want to demonstrate it real quick?
Sure.
Here, I'll hold it for you, or can you
Trim that.
Okay.
This is the orange one.
Oh, the bottom.
It's a wearable device. It's another Israeli company.
Oh, it was on already. Oh, there it is.
Bluetooth audio device 2004-000-8 connected.
Star Trek.
So I with just using my finger, I can.
A man is in front of you. Golf thaws out for spring season with Simulator by Shane Renee,
Yeah, it's renewal.
managing editor. Even if you've never read Malcolm Gladwell's best-selling book Outliers, you've probably still stumbled across its central message that practice makes perfect, about 10,000 hours of practice to be.
So it can read text. It can recognize faces and people that are out there. It has a number of other wonderful tools that can help somebody remain or to be independent and empowered, and that's where I hopefully see it going. And again, as I said, there's some very powerful AI tools out there that can actually recognize a scene and describe it. So the idea that, again, I'd be looking at a picture of some history person. I could say, oh, that's Abraham Lincoln or George Washington crossing a river. So that to me is very, very exciting, and that's just one example of it.
So what is the device called again?
This is called the MyEye from Orcam.
Cool. And how does it work? I mean, roughly?
It has algorithms there's a lot of research that went into the program. The OCR engine is a result of a lot of deep machine learning that they basically compacted into this little device about the size of a lipstick or a finger that I can wear and attach to my camera. So that's part of their artificial intelligence. That whole technology came out of the parent company, which was called MobileEye, which is the vision in the autonomous vehicles that are out there today. So Tesla and Mercedes-Benz and many of the leading car manufacturers putting out autonomous cars are using that deep learning, machine learning, to basically recognize objects, and in this case text, or people, to basically provide that information in a independent, empowered version manner.
That's absolutely fascinating. Did you have anything to add, Dr. Morritt, or?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
For individuals that want to kind of try it out at a little different level, you can also download Seeing AI to your iPhone. It was developed by a Microsoft engineer who's blind, and it can read text. It can also identify not by name, but if there's a man or woman, it will say this is a 30-year-old man and he's smiling. It will also identify objects as well as paper money. So it's really interesting, and it uses Microsoft's Azure cloud-based systems to do the processing.
Did you say it would tell you the age of the person?
Yeah, it sometimes it's not exactly correct, but it's close enough. But if you if you turn it on to that mode, it will say, I see a 35-year-old woman, and she is smiling.
That's dangerous.
And it will also identify objects. So if you put like a coffee cup, or take a picture of a computer, it will say this looks like a computer, this looks like a coffee cup, and it's free, and it also has an OCR engine that can read text on the fly. So really it does a great job, and it's very impressive. Considering that it's free, it's a great tool for an individual to utilize.
And what's the name of it?
Seeing AI, SEEING AI.
Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Oh, it's very good. But I actually have it on that iPhone over there.
Mm-hmm.
Our philosophy is always not to make the person look like everybody else. And what we try to avoid is, this hopefully blends in or becomes non-attention grabbing. But the idea of having somebody sitting there with a phone over a book in a classroom calls out, I'm different, and that's kind of philosophically where we make our choices in terms of equipment whenever possible.
Anything to add?
Nothing to add to that.
All right, excellent. All right, so AI is being used in the classroom for teachers as well, helping teachers automate grading, being able to get feedback about a curriculum. Educators now more than ever have access to a variety of data that can assist them in identifying classroom weaknesses. Some say that most data collected about student learning is indirect, inauthentic, lacking demonstrable reliability or validity, and reflecting unrealistic retention timelines. Your thoughts, Dr. Friedlander?
I think at least I know the schools in New Jersey, while they have their annual assessments, a lot of teachers are doing more formative assessment. Some using technology or probes throughout the year to give them a better idea of what the students need in terms of differentiating the instruction and making sure students understand the skills. So, and some schools are using things like Ames Web, which are more curriculum-based measures to help determine the course of instruction. But I do see in some districts where it's much more data-driven, and there's a requirement for teachers to consistently collect data and make decisions based on that. So I know that it is definitely an emphasis. But I get this feedback from my students, but I don't spend my days in a school system, so it's hard for me to kind of get a sense of what they're doing more specifically.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Simmons? No. Okay. All right, let's shift gears here. So the big question, I guess everybody is wondering, all this hype about AI, is it going to ever replace the teacher? AI advocates often argue that they are not trying to replace teachers, but to make their life easier or more efficient. Some people out there say they don't believe that. The key driver of AI applications is cost reduction, which means reducing the number of teachers, as this is the main cost in education. In your expertise, what do you guys think? What do you think the future AI-teacher relationship will look like? Dr. Friedlander?
I'm skeptical, but I don't see it replacing, but I see it somehow improving the instruction that can take place, in the classroom as we amass more data. I think it could be really helpful for, especially folks in like my position where we're teaching teachers, like what are the most effective practices and how can we provide more feedback and how can we change our practices so that our instruction is better and more effective. So I see it. I know that there are a number of colleges now that are using AI in simulation for teaching teachers and how to teach and also how to engage in parent-teacher conferences and how to give students feedback in the classroom. So I think I'm excited by those perspectives and those components, but I don't really ever see robots teaching students, because you're missing out on that relationship, which is found to be a key part of learning.
Well, if I can talk about it from an accommodation model, I think that I would agree that I don't see it ever entirely replacing the kind of work that we do in our office, but hopefully what I would like to see happen in the future is that there's less of a need for accommodation, because students are more autonomous and they have more access to this technology that will help them to not be dependent on offices like ours. So ideally what you would like to see are universities with offices like ours that serve more on a consultant type basis rather than being critical to ensuring that students have access. So hopefully this is what this technology will eventually provide.
Your thoughts?
Some students need more time, more instruction time, and if there's a application or program that can provide that specialized instruction time that student requires, it can only benefit the student and the teacher relationship. So if it's implemented correctly, it could be a win-win for everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Let me go ahead and take an opportunity to open it up over here. Did you guys have any questions that you guys wanted to ask the panelists? Go ahead.
I have one question. This is for Mr. Ralph Samek. Let's say students utilize the wearable technology every day or every other day. What are the consequences of having the technology on them for a prolonged period of time? For example, if studies show that being on the phone and with the phone close to your ear, it gives off radiation, which could lead to a higher chance of cancer. How do you nuance the wearable technology in order to avoid harm doing or maybe even a class action lawsuit?
Good question.
That's a good question. I don't have an answer. We're not the manufacturer, and I think that of the technology we do, we are the distributor, but it certainly bears further study, because I don't think there's enough of a history out there yet for the technology to find out if there's any harm. So that's a good question.
Dr. Friedlander, did you have anything to add to that question, or?
No, not really.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay.
I'm a student in master in secondary education, and I spent 3 days in CPS the last week in one middle school and one high school classroom for special education. It's kind of it's not inclusion classroom, it's kind of mainstream classroom. So I have questions. According to my experience, a lot of students come from the low-income families, so maybe they cannot afford this kind of very expensive devices. So how much does your devices cost?
So that's a really good point. So the price is still out of bounds for most of the students in the Chicago public system, because they're in a lower economic income bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So the responsibility has to some degree fallen upon the school district to provide the least restrictive educational environment. So they have to buy the equipment for the use of the student.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that the simple technology like the pen that Dr. Morehouse was referring to, that might be a couple $100 to some of the more expensive communication devices that range in the $12,000 to $15,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a wide gamut.
I was just going to say, for us at the higher education level, it's more of a cost analysis that we need to kind of go through, because we have to look a lot of times at how much does it cost us, for instance, to convert text.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we hire staff to convert text into a format that students can actually access. Look at how many times we have to do that for a student enrolled in 4 classes, for however many textbooks. If we got more than one student during the quarter, how many texts do we have to convert? And look at the labor involved and kind of weigh that against the cost of the new technology.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it comes out to be more cost efficient actually to invest in much more expensive IT than it would be actually to invest all that energy and resources in terms of labor on the part of staff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You guys have any other questions? Go ahead.
So let's just say that robots aren't going to take over the world and kill us, which that's kind of a ridiculous notion. But do you think the teachers will eventually have to pick up a degree in maybe information systems or computer science to work with this technology?
I would say that that's a big question, because I think we all touch upon this whole notion that teachers aren't always prepared to deal with this technology that's out there. So I don't know that they need to get a degree in computer science to use the assistive technology, but somewhere along they have to get the training and exposure to it. So I think that's probably more relevant.
Yeah, I would agree that, like I said before, as part of teacher education programs, students should have at least one survey course on assistive technology, so that at least they're aware, and then in their schools they can be provided with additional in-service programs or go to ed camps on the weekends for additional training. But I think it's incumbent upon the teachers, and especially those special ed teachers, to learn as much as they can. And in today's environment, you can learn a lot from YouTube, going to ed camps, being on Twitter, AT chats. So there's a wide there's a wide variety of ways that teachers can learn about these technologies and become proficient in them, as long as they're motivated to do so.
Well, I'll throw one out there for you guys. While you're talking about this, about things teachers need to learn and all, and I also think about, instead of the teacher being replaced in the classroom, what do you all think about right now there's a lot of in-classroom curriculum development autonomy or within the district or something, but as AI starts to step into this and you introduce companies and things, how do you stay away from where that curriculum turns into more of like a Pearson-esque, like a large company controlling that for many different groups, without then the district or the school having to have a whole IT department developing their own software and packages. So how do you balance that, I guess, like your thoughts on that?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to my colleagues who have more experience in K through 12.
Yeah, I mean, most schools will have an assistant superintendent of curriculum, and then they'll have a curriculum team. I think it's incumbent upon the curriculum team to review the content, whether it's supported by AI or just be a reading or a subject studies curriculum, to see that it meets the needs of the students in that particular district, in terms of the content and the strategies. And I have seen where districts have basically kind of abdicated their responsibility, where they buy into a curriculum, and in a sense, the curriculum is driving the instruction instead of the teachers making a decision as to what's important and how it's done. So I think it's definitely there has to be a process where schools are reviewing their curriculum to see that it's really meeting their needs.
I'm sure it's a larger problem in general beyond the scope of special needs populations. It's really core to the future of education, and I had never really thought about the idea of a computer terminal replacing a teacher, but what I hear you saying, that there's a real concern with artificial intelligence getting more and more sophisticated, that teachers will go by the way of the buggy whip, and
and even when you look at the curriculum today, it's also driven by certain states, because they wield the power back to the textbook companies as to what is included. And so even without AI included, certain states have tremendous influence on the content of textbooks, and it creates an unfair advantage for certain states who are don't have as many students and don't have the say in what's in there.
All right. Well, told you an hour goes by fast. We're just scratching the surface. Why don't we take the last few minutes here to just wrap things up, if you guys want to add something that we haven't discussed real quickly, and then how they can get in contact with you, maybe about your department or...
Sure. So let me start off by saying I just don't want it to be lost in the conversation from the higher education model. I know that we're focusing on K through 12, but I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this dialogue and I'm thinking, a lot of times this technology doesn't altogether transfer to higher ed. And the model here is entirely different, so I'm thinking about the teaching and learning centers and the teaching commons. How can we get this kind of expertise, this kind of knowledge, this kind of awareness to professors who are actually in the classroom who need to teach students with different kinds of disabilities? The model is entirely different here. You know, we don't have special education classrooms. We've got students with disabilities in all different facets of the university. So it's really very important for us to be able to build into our teaching excellence centers this kind of expertise and this kind of knowledge.
Great point.
So in terms of contacting me, I'm with the Center for Students with Disabilities at DePaul University. We've got 2 offices to serve you. The Loop Campus office, which is downtown Chicago on Jackson Boulevard, 25 East Jackson Boulevard. Our email address is csd@depaul.edu. And we also have an office right here at the Lincoln Park campus at 2250 North Sheffield in the Student Center. Our number is 312-362-8002.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go out to Dr. Friedlander. I know you wrote like several books and you talked about Alexa in the classroom. Why don't you go ahead and tell us your final thoughts tonight?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, I think, you know, as we all shared, I mean, the field is changing like, you know, literally every minute. It is hard to keep up, but, you know, as educators, we really need to do the best for our own professional development so that we can bring the skills that we need to help students in our classroom. So I think it's really important for educators to connect with other educators on Twitter to create their own professional learning networks, which is really key. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm at the College of St. Elizabeth. It's just Friedlander@csd.edu. On Twitter, I'm at Assistive Tech, TEK. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or connect with me on Twitter, which would be fantastic.
All right.
Woodlake Technologies is we're located in downtown Chicago. Feel free to come visit. I can be reached at ralph@woodlaketechnologies.com, and our website has a lot of the assistive technology that we talked about. Again, is woodlaketechnologies.com. Feel free to reach out, and if you have any questions, love to help, and you feel free to visit.
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. And that, let's go ahead and
Well, yeah.
John real quick.
No, I want to thank you guys for coming out. This was fantastic. And thank you guys for tuning in online. And for those of you who are here, feel free to stick around and eat online. Sorry, I can't send you cookies through the camera. Yeah, we will have more of these events coming up in the future. So stay tuned to CET events. And if you have any ideas, what's our easiest? It's still email or
you can check out our website.
Yeah, let's say you could go to CET.
DePaul.edu or CET@DePaul.edu.
Yeah.
We're here.
We're here, and for those DePaul people, we're also 5 days a week. Lab space that we're in right now is open for you to come use. And yeah, thanks again, and we'll sign off, and then you guys can hang around if you'd like.
And thanks to everybody who showed up.
Thanks a lot. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, thank you. That was great. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Very awesome. Thanks, James. I feel we had